Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. So as you can see, I have a huge basket full of rolling pins that I have been collecting for quite some time now. They are all from thrift stores and I've been wanting to do a DIY project with these for a while. So in today's video, I am going to be showing you how I'm going to turn some of these rolling pins into gorgeous kind of French cottage-esque decorative pieces like this one right here. So make sure you stick around, subscribe to my channel, turn on that little notifications bell so you're notified whenever I post a new video, and give this video a big thumbs up. All right, let's get started with the DIY. Okay, so I have very little space to work with here, but we will do our best. I picked out a few different rolling pins that I wanted to show as an example of how I went ahead and did this gorgeous kind of print design. And the steps that I took, it was very easy. You need minimal supplies for this. You can get rolling pins from the Goodwill, from the Salvation Army, any thrift store. You can usually pick them up for $1 or $2. I get a lot from the Goodwill bins. Every time I get some, I just throw them in my collection. And I've been wanting to do this project for a long time. So I had a few hours this afternoon. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to just sit down and do this project because it is really an easy project and you don't need a whole lot of supplies. All right, so this one that I did right here, I love how it turned out. I did this one actually for myself with my own colors. I have some really pretty greens throughout my decor in my house, so I wanted to do something kind of vintage spring cottage looking. Of course, these are all for decorative purposes. You should not use these for, you know, food prep once you've gone and done the technique that I'll show you, but definitely for decorative purposes only. Okay, so these are the ones that I picked. I picked a large one right here, and then I also picked an old, this is definitely a vintage one. I think all of these are fairly vintage, but this one is definitely probably from the 1940s or so. It had red handles. As you can see, I love the distressing in it. I'm not going to actually do anything with the handles only because I love them as they are. We're just going to do some decorating on the actual rolling portion. And then I just picked kind of like a basic one, and you find a lot of these basic ones at the Goodwill. So I thought this would be a good example to show you also. Let's go over some of the other supplies that you're gonna need. So I have a few different paints. I have a chalk paint, I have some acrylic craft paint, I have some antique wax, here's some more acrylic paint. I'm just not sure exactly which colors I'm going to do yet. I'm probably going to do a few different ones to just kind of show you variation. You can obviously use any type of craft paint or chalk paint that you'd like. And then you can actually do different finishes to it as you go. You can kind of, if you have multiple rolling pins like I do, you can kind of experiment and do different techniques, but I'm going to show you the technique that I like and that I've used multiple times, because this isn't the only rolling pin I've done. I've actually done a few of them. I will be listing a lot of these for sale in my Etsy shop, so I'm going to show you that technique today. Okay, then in addition to your paints, I have a few different inks. Now, if you are a paper crafter like me, you probably have a bunch of different inks, or if you do stamping or anything like that. I just grabbed some of my inks. I grabbed the archival red geranium, and then a few different of my more basic colors. I have ground espresso, vintage photo, which I use all the time, and this is the one that I actually used on that previous rolling pin that I just showed you. I also have hickory smoke and then black soot. So I actually might grab one more rolling pin because I have a black handled rolling pin that I wanted to do as well. So I might grab that one and we'll do 4 all together. And then you're also going to need I have these little foam daubers. These are what I use to distress my paper crafting. You can get these on Amazon. I will link this in the description. But another option is, if you don't have like a dauber like this, another option would be to go to the Dollar Tree and to get makeup beauty blenders. They work really well for this kind of a project. So this is just a Dollar Tree makeup beauty blender that you could use. It's got like a sponge head to it, and that works really well. Also, these makeup brushes work really well. I know crafting stores have them as craft brushes, but Dollar Tree also has them in their makeup section because they're makeup blending brushes. So these work really well also. I tend to like more of a spongy type applicator, or like this one. This one is actually like a foam applicator. So either one of these two are my preference when doing a project like this. All right, I also just have a small, this is actually on the smaller side, but I have a small paintbrush. You can use whatever size paintbrush you want. Obviously, don't use anything too big because you kind of want to be detailed with some of your painting. And last but not least, you're gonna want some amazing stencils. Now, these ones are Martha Stewart Craft stencils. I believe these are discontinued. I have looked everywhere for them. I've looked on Amazon, I've looked online. I cannot find these specific ones anywhere. I actually found these at the Goodwill bins. I love them. They are very detailed. They are gorgeous. There's all different ones, but you can find some on Amazon, which I will link below. There's some similar. Again, these are Martha Stewart Craft. If you can find them, that's awesome. If not, like I said, I will link something very similar. Okay. Now, first thing that I like to do when I do anything on wood, any stenciling or inking or anything like that, is I'm going to go wash all of these down and get the wood wet, because I find that the paint and the ink adheres better when the wood is a little bit damp. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put them in my sink, wash them all down, scrub them. This one has like a sticker still stuck on it up here. So I'm going to scrub them all down and then I'll be back. Okay, so I have all of my rolling pins washed down. They all are slightly damp feeling. So we're gonna go ahead and start with, I think, which one do I want to start with? Maybe this one right here. We're just gonna go ahead, let's start with the big one. I'm gonna move these out of the way since I have very little space to work with. And let's just work with this large one here first. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to paint the handles. Now on this specific one, I am going to do a dark, almost emerald green color. I'm going to use the Folk Art Home Decor chalk paint in antique green number 36210. I've used this for other projects that I've done. The previous one that I had already done, this one right here, has a little bit more of a lighter green or an olive green color, and that is the paint from Craft Smart right here. It's a matte acrylic paint in olive green right there. So that is the color for that one. But this one we're going to do slightly darker. Now I'm not going to sand any of this down. As you can see, it looks like there might be a light coating of something on here. I'm not going to sand it down. That's why chalk paint is great for painting these kind of surfaces. I'm just going to go ahead in with my brush and my chalk paint, and I'm just going to paint right over this handle. And I'm going to just be very careful about getting it on. I don't want to get it on the actual roller. I just want to get the paint on the handle. So that's my first step. I'm just going to go ahead and paint these all up, or this one all up, and let that dry. And then from there, we'll show you the next step. I got a little overzealous and I ended up painting a few more than the ones that I showed you. I think I have 5 or 6 of them that I painted. But I did that because I wanted to show you different techniques and different way to distress these and different ways to decorate them. Okay, so I'm gonna start with this green one that I have here. My handles are all nice and dry. And so now I'm gonna use a little bit of my wax. And I am again using the Folk Art Home Decor 6445 Antique Wax right here. Now, this is what I'm using my beauty blender for. So all I've done is I've dipped my beauty blender into my wax a little bit, and then I have a little paper towel. I've just kind of daubed it off on the paper towel because I don't want a whole bunch of that wax on there. I just want a little bit. And then I've gone ahead and just rubbed it around the edges of my wooden handle here, and that's just to distress it and age it and make it look like it's been used a lot or for a long time. Now you can also kind of move this distressing all up through your handle as well. It's going to darken up your paint slightly, which is okay for me. And then I'm also kind of going right around this little ridge, just because that's kind of where it would naturally darken and age and distress. So I'm literally just going to continue moving this wax in spots that it would normally really darken and age. Maybe a little bit on the handle here, little bits here and there, but I'm just really kind of just rubbing that in with that beauty blender. And you can see how the edges have gotten really kind of, that's a good shot right there. You can see the edges have really gotten dark, and you kind of just want to get rid of that brightness and make it look more vintage. So I think this one is looking really good. Let's flip to the other side and we'll do the same thing. Now this is just a super easy technique. There's other things that you can do as well, which I'm going to show you with the ink. But this one, for instance, I really liked the color of the antique wax over that antique green. So again, just going around the edge. And then if there's any spots where the paint is kind of light, that's kind of where I'm rubbing in this wax as well. Just all along the edges, along that little rib. Just rub it right in there and make it look very distressed and aged. Okay, so I've gone ahead and finished aging both of my handles. As you can see, I'm going to let that dry. Now, if you wanted to age it even more, you could take a little bit of light grit sandpaper and just sand around the edges a little bit, just to give it a little bit more of a vintage weathered look. So there is that one. That one's, we're going to let dry, and we're going to move on to another handle. Okay, so this is another one that I did a sub or a base color of, I think this is like a dark gray. Yeah, it's called the Deep Gray. It's Craft Smart Deep Gray matte acrylic paint. So that is what the color looks like when it is dry. Now, again, just like I did before, I'm going to go in with my beauty blender and my antique wax, but instead of just doing the edges on this one, we're going to do the entire handle, and we're just going to go over that entire gray color with this wax, antique wax. The antique wax. Now this is going to change the color slightly. Okay, so as you can see, this is darkening up that gray quite a bit, and it's giving it a more rich look. That's what I like about this wax, is that it almost makes your paint look rich. And I think that's what wax does in general to paint. That's why a lot of people do chalk paint on furniture and stuff, and then do a wax on the top, because it just gives it a nice rich look. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let that one dry. So that is just another technique for finishing a handle. And then again, when that is dry, if you wanted to go ahead in and sand it up just a little bit to distress it even more, you could definitely do that. Okay, so here's another one that I did, and I did this one with the Espresso Craft Smart Matte Acrylic Paint. And then this one is going to be more of a brown finish. Now you could do like I did before and take the wax and go in and darken or make this more rich looking, or you could do another technique, which I'm going to show you right now, and that is using your distress ink. Now this is the technique that I used on my sample right here. I actually distressed all the handles with distressed ink. So it actually, as you can see, it creates kind of like darkness around the corners and edging. So that is what I'm going to show you. I'm going to just take my archival. This is going to be Vintage Photo. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use the Ground Espresso, a little bit darker. And then I'm going to take my little stamping pad here, my little I think this is foam stamping pad. And I'm gonna get a lot of ink on there. And we're just gonna go around my edges with that dark espresso ink and really darken up all of these edges. You wanna make it look very old and worn. And this kind of does the same thing as the wax, although it's going to give it more of a matte finish as opposed to kind of a gloss finish that the wax gives. And you can kind of put this, this blends out really nice. So if you do a little bit and then kind of pull it and blend it through the rest of your piece, just gives it a nice kind of, as you can see on the edges here, it gives like a nice distressing. Get really dark on the end there. Want it to look like it was really well used. Okay, so there's a nice distressed side, and here's what it looks like undistressed, just so you can see the difference here. All right, let's go back in and do this one. Get some more ink on there. Just doing that up nice and dark over that espresso coloring. So we have the espresso color paint and the dark espresso ink. And the ink is from Archival Inks. And I use these inks on a lot of different things. I do a lot of crafting with these inks. All right, I have one more that I'm going to show you, and that is actually a light colored one. I did one in this natural buff. So as soon as that one's still a little bit wet, but as soon as that one is dry, I will do something different in that one. But look at how nice and dark that looks. So again, you could scuff these up if you want to. I kind of like them nice and dark like that. I think it gives a good contrast. Okay, let me see if my natural buff handled one is dry, and if not, we'll start working on some of the decorating on the actual roller. Okay, so my natural buff colored handles are dry, and I tried to pick a lighter colored wood rolling pin for this, so that way it wasn't such a stark contrast. But we're also going to use the Archival Vintage Photo, which is a little bit lighter anyhow, for distressing on the handles. And just like we did before, we're just going to go around the edge very lightly. As you can see, it pulls that color very easily. And I'm going to go right around the ribs of my handle here, and then I'm also going to go down here around the base of the handle and just do a little bit of that ink along there, and then maybe just a few little spots kind of pull up like that, just to distress it slightly. I don't want to go crazy. I still want to keep it on the lighter side, but I think that looks really good. Okay, so let's do the other handle. And again, you don't need a lot. Be very light. If you start out light, you can always go darker, but you can't always go lighter. You'll have to repaint it. So I'm just starting out really light until I get it kind of where I want it. And then just going over my ribs and creases. This side has a hole in it, so you could kind of go around that hole a little bit, like it's been hung up. And let's go around our edge down here, or our base. Really kind of just distress it lightly. All right, I like that. I think that looks really good. Alrighty, so let's let everything dry. The ink dries very quickly. anyhow, but the wax takes a little bit of time to dry. So I'm gonna let everything dry, and then I'm gonna come back and we're gonna do the actual decorating on the rollers. Okay, so I'm gonna start with this natural buff color rolling pin, and I picked this really pretty rose stencil. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm just gonna hold this stencil on my rolling pin kind of where I want it. I'm going to use my beauty blender. Now I got the sponge wet, so it's nice and wet. It's not sopping wet, but it is it's damp. I dipped it into my natural buff color. I have two little palettes here, so I just dipped a little bit into my natural buff color, and then I kind of blotted it out in my other little palette here, just because I want it very light on here. And then I'm starting in the center, and I'm literally just stamping around that flower. You don't even have to go to the edges. You can just hit the edges slightly, and then very light, just so you get a nice little print of your flower on your rolling pin, just like that. So I'm gonna do this all the way around my rolling pin, just in multiple spots. I wanna let this dry right there. So maybe I'll do one right in here. Again, just dipping it in my color lightly and then blotting it out. And like I said, these beauty blenders work really well for this. So just really light, try not to hit the edges. You definitely don't want to go over that harsh straight edge. You just want to stay on the inside of your stencil. And there. Really pretty. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and let this dry. I'll go all the way around. Now I have another stencil that I want to do on this one, but I'm also going to I'm thinking about using the green color here. I have a little bit of, I have this pretty little leaf kind of print, so I was kind of thinking I would add some of the green to that, which I can do the same thing. I'm going to just leave my paint right on there. I'm going to dip it in my antique, this is the olive green color. I'm going to just dip it in my olive green. I'm going to blot it over here. I want it blotted really well. I want it very light. And then we're just going to just slightly dab that green color. We want it very light like that. So you can kind of you can see it, but it's still on the lighter side. So again, you can play around with this however you want. You can move them around. I'm just using what I have on my brush or on my stamper right now, my beauty blender. Yeah, you can kind of just do it however you want, and then go ahead and let that dry. But this one's going to be really pretty. Okay, so what I'm doing now is, now that I have my roses done, I have quite a few of my little leaves done, I'm going back in with my rose stencil, and I'm finding, kind of lining it up over the top of where my stencil was underneath. Doesn't have to be exact, but pretty close. And then I'm going back in with some of the green that I did the leaves, and I'm just doing the center of the rose. So it puts a little bit of green right in the center. Just to kind of give it a little bit more dimension. I think that's good. Okay, so this one is pretty good. I don't want to go overboard with it, but I think that one looks nice, and we're going to go ahead and let that dry. Okay, so I am going to show you another technique, and we're going to use the red handled rolling pin that I didn't paint or anything. It's just as I bought it. But for this one, we're going to use my red archival ink and my little beauty blender brush. All right, so again, I'm going to use the rose only because I like a red rose. I think it's going to be pretty on this one. Just going to center this right on my rolling pin, and then I'm going to put a little bit of that ink on my brush. Make sure it's centered. I don't measure anything. I'm just eyeballing it. Maybe this way, just a little bit more. And then what I'm doing is I'm just brushing this ink onto, just like dabbing it kind of around the edges of my rose. Just, you could tape this down if you wanted to. I'm not. This is such a fine little stencil that I'm just dabbing and using my fingers to hold it down. And again, you don't have to go all the way to the edge. You can even do multiples if you want. So there's one right there. So now if I wanted to say put another one, I'm going to turn it slightly and we'll put that one right here and we'll do another one kind of next to it. So we have like a little cluster of roses. Again, I'm just kind of going over what I did before and just lightly dabbing with that beauty brush. So you can go darker in some spots, you can go lighter in some spots. So you can see what it looks like. It just gives you a nice little print. I'm going to do one more rose, so we'll have 3 roses on here. Just move it slightly. Again, just dabbing. Kind of dark in the middle and then working my way out with a little bit lighter of the ink. But this ink is so versatile. You can do a lot with it. There we go. So there, we have our 3 roses on our red rolling pin. Now we can go in and distress this as well. Now the ink, like I said, the ink dries fairly quickly. So we can kind of go in and distress it even more with some other ink. I'm going to use, let's use the Vintage Photo. And we can go ahead and take our, we could take our stencil again. Let's see, which way did this rose go? I think this is the hardest part, is trying to figure out right there. No, not right there. Right here. Trying to figure out how you put it on. The first time, like I said, doesn't have to be exact, but I'm going to go ahead and just take a little bit of the darker color and just go in the center and then maybe along the edges slightly. That one you didn't even really see much. I wonder if I just go in there. I'm just going to go in right on top and just darken it up a little bit right on top. And then I'll go around the edges on the outside and just darken it up around the edges. Just kind of soften those edges up slightly with that Vintage Photo. And this makes it look like that print has been on there for years and years and years and has kind of worn off like the rest of the paint on this rolling pin. So don't be afraid to use your paper inks for other projects as well. You can even go around the edges and distress the corners of this, which is what I'm doing. I'm just darkening up those edges. Making it look, it is really old anyhow, but distressing it even more than it is. Distress more of the handle. I like that worn handle look. All right, I think that one looks pretty nice. That would look really nice in a red and white cottage house decor. All right, I cleaned off my makeup sponge, and we're gonna use some more of our wax for decorating with this stencil right here on our large green handled rolling pin. So just like we did with the paint, we're gonna do the same thing with the wax. Now the wax is a little bit lighter, a little bit more forgiving, so I am gonna kind of daub it, but we're gonna just lightly daub that wax right over our stencil, just like this. Again, I'm just kind of holding it into place. And you don't have to be perfect with it. As you can see, it just makes a nice imprint. I'm gonna move it around a little bit. Get some more of that wax on there. I wanna make sure that it's really kind of well blended in. And just lightly stamp that on there. We're gonna just continue moving our way, moving this all around and stamping all the way around the entire rolling pin with our wax. It's very easy, not hard. Just lining it up, holding it into place. You can go darker in some spots, lighter in some spots. And then we'll go back in and we'll use some of that on the edges as well. So we can actually wax the whole thing lightly, just so that it gives it kind of like a really nice aged look. Let's do this. Now you can really use any paints or inks for this. You can just try out different things, see what works. I find that watering things down sometimes works a little bit better. I like to go off the edges as well with my design, so it doesn't look so, I don't know. I just like the look of it going off the edges. You can mix colors if you wanted to do it more colorful. You can flip your stamp in, you can wash it and flip it inside out, so that way your pattern is going a different way. But I'm just trying to fill up all of the space pretty full with my wax. Just don't get those harsh flat edges. Try to stay in your stencil so that way you're not getting those harsh edges. All right. So once you have it the way you want, which I think this looks pretty good, nice and covered, I'm gonna go in with, I think let's see what the wax does around the edges. Oh yeah, I like the wax around the edges. Let's go around the edges with the wax and kind of just blend those edges in. Darken them up a little bit. That one's a little too dark. You can kind of go right along the inside here and darken things up. Make it look worn. You can even bring that waxing kind of out over your design a little bit. There's no wrong way to do this. still have a little bit of my sticky, looks like a little stickiness there. Let's just blend that into the wax a little bit. There. There, and just really just kind of aging this, getting all those light spots darkened up a little bit. Just make sure your brush is kind of wet and it blends nicely. All right, I think that looks pretty good. I like that. Okay, I'm gonna just let that one dry and we'll move on to the next one. All right, for this next one, we're doing the brown handled one. I'm gonna do this peony flower, and I think I'm going to do 3 peonies. So I'm going to put one over on this side, and we're going to be inking. So I'm going to use my ground espresso archival ink, and again, just like I did before, get a lot of ink on that, and we're just gonna stamp that flower with that ink. All right, just make sure that you're kind of dabbing with this one as opposed to kind of brushing, because it's the stamp, or I mean the stencil is very fine, so I just don't want to wreck the you know, rip it. But if you're just dabbing that ink on there, you should be good. There, that's really pretty. See, you could also wipe this down and flip it over and do one that way as well, which I think that's what I'm gonna do. Have a little bit of Windex right here and a paper towel. I'm just gonna wipe this down carefully. And I just kind of pat my stencils just to get them somewhat clean. Just don't want to rub them too hard because you don't want to break those little pieces. Just get most of that ink off of there. And we'll let that dry for just a second, and we'll flip this the other way. And we'll put that one right about there. We'll go back in with our ink, and we're going to ink this one right up. This is a fun, easy project. It's not hard. You could do this technique to cutting boards. You could do this technique to really anything wood that you have in your, you could do it to wooden spoons. If you just wanted to decorate them up a little bit. Oh, I like that. That's pretty. We'll do one more kind of going this way, only almost like a cluster of peonies in the center. We'll put this one back like this. Put that one down. Just like that. I think that's pretty. Let's do just a little bit of, where did my leaves go? I have leaves here somewhere. Oh, here they are. Let's do a little bit of leaves just to add something to it. Let's do a leaf right here. And we'll do a couple little leaves just popping out the top corners. Good, I like it. All right, let's distress the edges on this one. I'm gonna use just the same ink, and we're just gonna go around the edges. Just distress those edges. Works really well. Do the same thing on the other side. put initials in here. If you had initial stencils, you could do like your house, your family initials. Lots of different things you could do. Okay, I like that. I think that turned out really nice. All right, I just finished up this last one with the darker kind of grayish handles, and for this one I used the Hickory Smoke ink with this floral stencil that I actually used on the one that I did before. So they're both very similar. One's green and one is gray. But yeah, I like how the Hickory Smoke looked on this. It almost was definitely more of a gray ink look, and then again I just distressed all the edges with that gray color as well. Okay, so now that we have our rolling pins all decorated, I'm going to let everything dry. Now you can just leave them as is if you want, or you could spray them down if you wanted to spray them down with a coat of some sort of a sealant. You could definitely do that. I'm going to leave mine. I don't want mine glossy looking. I have a Mod Podge spray, a matte finish Mod Podge spray, which I could spray them down with, but like I said, these are just for decor. I want them to look old. I want them to look worn out. So I'm not going to do any finish on top of them. Hope you guys enjoyed this DIY upcycle video. I guess it's kind of like an upcycle / downcycle video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Stick around for more videos to come, and we will see you again in the next video real soon. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.